Welcome to episode 212 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here with Cam.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. And we're a pair of Ottawa-based players who play just about anything and everything you can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic. It is December 31st, last day of 2020, perhaps the worst year of both of our lifetimes. And it's almost over. How you feeling?
Been a rough one for everyone, but tomorrow, since the human construction of years corresponds very directly and intimately with physical events, Lady Fate, Father Luck, whatever, will acknowledge that it is no longer 2020 and everything will be better and go away. Yeah. So
today is probably the height of hype for 2021, as 2020 has been kind of miserable. But unfortunately, I'm not too optimistic about 2021.
Yeah. I don't know. It's already 2021 in like Australia and probably parts of Europe, so we could ask them how it's been.
Yeah.
It's going to be 2021 by the time you hear this episode, so, hopefully you've had a good couple first hours.
Yeah. Happy holidays, Happy New Year to everybody listening. Merry Christmas. Yeah. What'd you get for Christmas this year? Anything good?
I got a Zoom call with my parents.
Nice.
I think that was it.
Nice. I also got a Zoom call with my parents. My brother.
No, that wasn't it. They shipped me some money to get me a gift. I haven't decided what I want to use on it yet because we couldn't see each other in person. But
nice. Yeah, I haven't seen my parents in person, so we haven't exchanged gifts yet either. But my little brother had a baby 3 days ago.
Wow.
Yeah, the 28th. So I'm an uncle now. So that's exciting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Has your humor changed at all? I guess you haven't had like a family dinner since you've been an uncle, so you haven't said inappropriate things on the table yet.
I don't think that happens until you see the kid in person for the first time, right? Is that how it works? Maybe?
I'm not a biologist, but yeah, it's probably something to do with I don't know, something gets in your eyes.
Yeah, maybe. But I got a brand new mouse. I got a brand new mouse for my computer because in my my recent obsession with World of Warcraft, I found out that the mouse I was using, just 2 buttons on the side, isn't enough buttons. So, Kay got
you were showing me some ones you were considering with 30 buttons on the side.
Yeah, so I got a Razer Naga, has 12 buttons on the side, and it's actually, you can change out the side panel, so you can put one on that has just the 2 buttons. You can put one on that has the 12, or you can put one on that has 7. And,
cool.
It's actually awesome. I love this mouse so much. It's really cool.
I assume you're going full 12?
Oh, yeah. I need all 12. 100%. I also got new RAM for my computer, which I haven't installed yet. But I don't know.
Installing RAM is pretty easy.
Is it do you just unplug? We'll take out the old one, plug in the new one. That's it?
Yeah, I think so.
You don't have to, upgrade or anything. It'll just work.
Yeah, I mean, we can double check with some of our friends that have more experience, but I've swapped RAM in computers before, and you just got to check your motherboard documentation. Depending on how many you're putting in, there's certain slots you're supposed to use.
Okay. Oh yeah, I only have 2 sticks in it now, and I'd be swapping out those 2 sticks for these 2 new sticks. So I imagine it would just go in the same slots it's already in.
Yeah, probably. I think they're just plug and play, but
cool.
We can double check.
Yeah. The only downside though of this new RAM is it's this really cool RGB RAM, but
what do you mean downside?
Well, my case is all black. You can't see in it.
You just leave the side panel off.
Yeah, but also usually it's the left side is the side that comes off, right? So my tower is on my left side, which faces the wall, so you wouldn't even be able to see it.
See, that's the mistake.
I know.
It is the left side that comes off. My computer case has like a window on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
So I always make sure that I set up everything so that it's on my right.
Yeah, I don't really have that option because how my desk is set up in my room, all the outlets in the room, there's the outlet on the left side wall to my left, and then there's one behind me. So to be able to plug in my computer, it needs to be on the left side of me. To bring it all the way around to the right side, I would have to run a bunch of extension cords and shit, and that's just not really worth it.
Yeah, but you just got to rotate your desk so that it's to the left of the plugin. These are the sacrifices you got to make for sweet RGB tech.
Well, like I originally, you've seen the room. I used to have my desk on that wall. So then the outlet was behind my desk. But now since I switched it over to its new position, it's on the left of the desk. So I don't want to move it back. I like where it is now. And I could
you could get like a mirror, and you could put a mirror on the left wall so that it reflects the sweet light so you can see in.
Then I could see the cool RGB. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're thinking big brain.
Yeah. We just got to use the properties of light and optics here. Modern science.
I'm sure I could actually just turn it so the left side of my case faces out and the front faces to my desk. That
works too.
That also works. That would be a little awkward with the cords coming from my desk though. Wrap them around. Especially when I'm standing right now, and when you lift everything up, everything's a little
you might need the length
farther. I don't know. I'll be able to figure it out. But right now the only piece of RGB equipment I have is this new RAM. So not a huge thing of huge importance at the moment, I guess. But next on my list is a new graphics card. They're just so expensive, and you can't even get them. The 30 series NVIDIA cards are literally always sold out. How do people get those?
New ones?
Yeah. I don't understand. They're sold out everywhere. They have been since they came out.
Apply for a job at NVIDIA.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. We'll game the system.
And then in your interview, when they ask why you want to work here, I don't know, guys, your cards are sold out. I'm just coming to the source.
I just need an in. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some Magic. Past couple of weeks, there have been some tournaments. Nothing too crazy, though. We're kind of at the end point of the season now where Kaldheim comes out in a month. Spoiler season starts in exactly a week. Well, it's already started, but, full-on spoiler season starts in a week with the release stream for Kaldheim. So we've seen a couple cards so far. We have modal double-face cards returning, which, we knew they were returning because we knew that the pathway cycle was getting completed. But I don't know about you, but I definitely didn't expect just modal double-face cards to exist in this set either.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely didn't expect it, but I also didn't think about it. I imagine if we had paused, we could have realized that the printing logistics of adding the 4 extra pathways are probably sufficient to make them design other cards to use up full double-sided sheets. But
I actually didn't even think about it from that perspective, from a purely printing standpoint. But there are more modal double-face cards in this set outside of just the pathways. In particular, we've seen one so far, which is Halver, God of Battle. It's a 4-mana 4/4, costs white 2. Legendary creature God. So gods are returning. First god ever, I believe, that doesn't have indestructible on it. So that's kind of cool. Its text reads, creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. And at the beginning of each combat, you may attach target aura or equipment attached to a creature you control to target creature you control. A little bit of weird text there. The more exciting part of this card is it actually has a backside. And the backside isn't a land this time around. The backside's actually an equipment. Legendary artifact, Sword of the Realms, 2 mana, white 1. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has vigilance. Whenever equipped creature dies, return it to its owner's hand. Equip for white 1. So this is a pretty interesting design. And what jumps out to me the most about this is that normally with a card like this being legendary, it's pretty bad in multiples, right? But just because it's either a creature or it's an equipment, it really...
It gives you a bit of a fail-safe.
What's the word I'm looking for? It's nullify? Is nullify the word I'm looking for?
Negates?
Yeah, it negates a lot of the downside of
disallows, it neutralizes, it counterspells.
Yeah, shit. Nailed it. Yeah, no, actually though, it negates a lot of the downside of playing multiples of these in your deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, 4 mana 4/4 on the front side, it's decent stats.
Yeah, it's like such a weird effect on the front. The fact that it moves, like moving equipment, I guess is normal. Moving auras is pretty strange. We've seen it kind of, I think, maybe, but it is pretty. It never comes up that often. So interesting to see if something like this sees play. But yeah, equipment on the backside. I wonder if they're all going to be equipment on the backside as like the Vikings weapons. Maybe that's the theme.
Yeah, I guess the real question is there a god in every color? Are they all equipment on their backside? Or maybe they're like enchantment or something. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably going to be a god in every color with an artifact on the back. That's my guess. That's my prediction, just because WotC loves cycles so much.
Mm-hmm. Very true. But yeah, like for the front side, its abilities are weird. I can't really imagine really any deck that would want this ability, but I'm more interested in this card for its backside, to be honest.
Yeah, giving like an equipment that isn't really card disadvantage because you can just serve with the creature and you'll get to pick it up again if something goes wrong.
Yeah, like that second line of text, when equipped creature dies, return it to its owner's hand. That's actually pretty good. And 2 mana to cast, 2 mana to equip is not a very high cost. So I like this card. I think it's pretty good. I'm not too sure. Like, I don't expect it to see any eternal play or even historic play. But in standard, it could be fine, to be honest.
Yeah, it could be. I'm curious, like, this, to see the play in standard, this would have to compete, at least for a while, against Embercleave, and for quite a while against things like Maul of the Skyclaves. And I'm not certain if the free equip when you cast those cards, like if this will be able to compete with that. The free equip is so nice.
Yeah. What I was definitely thinking about Maul of the Skyclaves when I read this card, but I imagine a deck that plays this card would just be playing Maul as well, right?
Yeah, you might have a problem with creature density, though. Oh, I guess this thing is just a creature.
But that's the thing, right? Like, this is also just a creature.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Power of split cards. This is actually kind of cool. Like, when I first saw split cards, the ones from the Ravnica sets, I didn't actually think about this, but like those had to be instants and sorceries because like you can't have a card with 2 different permanents that sit in play.
Yeah.
Using double face, like these are just split cards that are permanent spells. So it's a cool way to implement that.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to equipment though, we've like since the swords, really we haven't seen equipment ever be that good in standard. Embercleave has been the one exception in all these years, and Embercleave isn't really even an equipment, man. It's a fireball or it's a combat trick. Like, it's not.
It feels a lot more like Temur Battle Rage than an equipment.
It's not a traditional equipment in the sense. So I'm hesitant to even put it in the same realm as just equipments in general. So I don't know. Time will tell. I really like the new frame for the Kaldheim cards, like the showcase frames. Those will look really cool.
Yeah, it looks sweet.
But yeah, time will tell on this one. A couple other interesting cards from the set that have been spoiled so far. Showdown of the Skalds, 4 mana saga, red, white, 2. Chapter 1, exile the top 4 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Chapter 2 and 3, whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. I think this card is exceptionally good. This card reads
it
really
immediately
good
draws
to me.
parallels to Escape the Wilds.
Yeah.
Doesn't let you put extra lands into play, but I mean, it costs 1 less. But yeah, just a nice card draw type effect. Like, there's going to be a lot of games where this just draws 4 for 4 mana, which is nuts. And then the extra thing, like, the other chapters just pump up your creatures. This, seems quite good.
Yeah, I think this card's going to be pretty good role player in a lot of different archetypes too. Like, not just, red, white, aggressive decks where, your curve tops out at this or tops out, this and Embercleave or something. Like, in those decks, it seems really good because the 4 cards you're exiling off this are probably cheap, 1 or 2 mana. So there's a good chance you might be able to cast 2 or 3 of them the next turn and get a bunch of counters on the creatures you already have in play. But even outside of that, something like just in a Yorion shell, right?
Yeah, like Mardu Doom Foretold decks have been floating around they could pick this up.
Yeah.
It might even replace something like Treacherous Blessing, so you don't have the risk of being unable to remove it and having to ping yourself a bunch. Exactly.
Like, obviously, this card plays incredibly well with Yorion. And even if you don't have that many creatures on it, you know, the sequence of this into Flicker It with Yorion, into just cast one spell, and now my Yorion's a 5/6, and it outscales my opponent's Yorion, which is a 4 or 5. Like, sizing on Yorion is super important, and I don't even care if I have creatures in my deck. Even if the only creature in my deck is Yorion, I think this card is really good.
I mean, you could also just go back to playing Omen of the Sun like Yorion decks used to.
Yeah.
They're almost certainly going to have Castle Ardenvale in the mana base. So you could just like make a 1/1 to start growing.
I mean, let's be real. The Yorion decks are probably playing Skyclave Apparition as well. That's another creature that can get bigger. True. So yeah, I think this card's going to see a lot of play. I really, really like this one.
Yeah. Sagas are sweet too. It's nice to see them coming back more often.
Yeah. Big.
I think sagas are what Planeswalkers should have been. Can we just stop printing Planeswalkers and only print sagas?
Yeah. I kind of agree. I don't know how many of these you want to get into, but speaking of Planeswalkers, we can definitely read this one. Kaya, the Inexorable. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so.
Kaya the Inexorable. 5 mana Planeswalker, 5 starting loyalty, costs black, white, 3. +1, put a Ghost Form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. It gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. -3, exile target non-land permanent. -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying its mana cost. So,
a weird emblem.
It is a weird emblem. Pretty good emblem, though. It's
plus emblems pretty quickly. Like if you just plus on some, if you're playing a lot of legendary creatures, you plus twice, trade them off, you get some spirits, you just emblem and recast them.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's legendary, right? For the plus, it's just target non-token creature.
Oh yeah, sorry. It gets put into its owner's hand. I thought they got exiled and made a 1/1.
No, it's whenever the creature with the counter is exiled or dies, it goes back to its hand and creates a 1/1. So, I mean, the +1 is actually not too bad, right? If you're playing, you know, I'm going to bring this card back up, something like Skyclave Apparition. You know, that's pretty good. But I mean, this card's going to see play because of its -3, right? That's just a really clean catch-all, leaving behind a 2 mana, 2 loyalty Planeswalker. I think, you know,
at some point it's probably going to see play. I don't know if so I'm glad that they are returning to this slower style cookie cutter 5 mana Planeswalker design. Plus is some wacky form of card advantage. -3 is some form of removal. And then, I don't know, like an alt that is rarely relevant. But so I'm glad they're returning to that. I don't know if it's going to be able to keep up with the power spike that happened in Eldraine. But almost certainly when Eldraine leaves or if something else changes in Standard, then this type of card will be good. I mean, we've seen these type of Planeswalker be good when they were around. Teferi being the exceptional one, but even things like Ob Nixilis when it was around, or there was a 5 mana Jace that some people played.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're returning to this structure.
Yeah, honestly, though, I think if there's a black-white deck in Standard, it's probably going to want this card in some number. Just that -3 getting literally everything is just so important in so many games. Like Esper Yorion decks, you know, mid-range decks don't really exist in these color pairings, but who knows what'll happen with the new set.
Yeah,
but
any non-land permanent is so safe,
Yeah. I do expect, it's kind of easy to say, you know, the big mythic Planeswalker is going to see play, but I think a lot of people kind of just overlook this card because it's +1 is a little awkward.
It is kind of strange, but...
Yeah, and strange, but I think in, you know, specifically like a Yorion Shell or just some kind of black mid-range decks where your early creatures have, you know, ETBs, that sort of thing, I think this will be a pretty good card. Yeah. Were there any other spoilers you wanted to talk about before we get into the meat of our episode? Or
there's one spoiler that I'm mad about. Even if it never sees play, I'm mad it was printed. So Toski, Bearer of Secrets. This is a legendary creature with Squirrel. Costs 4 mana, 3 and a green, for a 1/1. And so if I hit a 4 mana 1/1, it has a very obnoxious text box. And it does. This spell can't be countered. It's indestructible. It has to attack each combat if able. And whenever any creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So even if this card sucks, even if it never sees play and is bad, it feels like the essence of the design problems of the last few years just summed up. Like, it's 4 mana. 4 mana already an issue. They should stop printing 4 mana cards. Fire of Invention, Wilderness Reclamation, they can't be trusted. 4 is wrong. But on a more actual note, it's a green card that provides card advantage that also can't be interacted with. Can't be countered and indestructible.
Whoa. This card can be interacted with. There's a lot of cards that exile things in the format right now.
Sure, yeah, it can be. It's not you can't. It's not unblockable and hexproof.
Yeah, it could be worse. This card could not be. This could be like a Carnage Tyrant, where it just had hexproof and couldn't be countered. Like that. That would be a problem.
Yeah, it could be more obnoxious, but the design philosophy behind it of removing interaction to some extent and providing green card advantage, I just really, really don't like.
I mean, it's 4 mana and it doesn't double your mana, so I think this one gets a pass from me.
That is true. But it's going to be one of those cards, I don't know. This card is either 0 or 10. You either play it and they can't do anything about it because they don't have an exile effect, and you're ahead on board, which means that you get to just swing and draw a bunch of cards and bury them that way. Or you're behind on board and it just keeps jump attacking into some 2/2 that blocks it and it doesn't do anything and you're down a card. I'm so mad about this design. It's so obnoxious.
It's an interesting one. I don't expect this card to see any main deck play in any deck, but I think it could be a pretty reasonable sideboard option for some matchups.
Sideboard is going to be nuts, against control decks. If you just slam this on 4 and they miss a turn, you just attack for 1 and draw a card. That's so hard for control to deal with. Extinction Event is around, but otherwise there's not that much minus type effects or targeted exile. Yeah. Maybe they'll be spoiling some more, but this is also the type of rare that makes limited formats bad. Because your opponent's going to play this and have a flyer that you calculated that their flyer is small, and so you chose not to remove it or something, and instead you played your creature so that it's just going to make all these decisions that you normally make in limited that use your life total as a resource. You're just going to get slammed, punished as soon as they play this and attack you in the air and draw a card, and now you can't deal with this, and you have to remove all their creatures. It's a nightmare.
It is definitely going to be annoying and limited. I'll give you that one, 100%.
Yeah, cards like this or things like Ruin Crab, I don't know if they're needed in standard enough to justify putting them in the limited format.
Fair enough. All right.
There are some rumors about spoilers. We have some unofficial photos online of snow permanents and snow spells and some Phyrexians that might be on Kaldheim. Nothing confirmed yet, though. So looking forward to the release stream to see if they'll be around.
We'll know in a week if those rumors are true or not. It would be exciting to see Phyrexians again. They were in standard when I started playing Magic, and we haven't seen them since. I wonder what those little guffers are up to.
They're a cool design, but with how many sets we've had recently that return to a known plane, I was looking forward to something new on Kaldheim. Not new Phyrexia 2.
Well, I don't know. Who knows what they're doing there? We don't know.
Yeah, maybe they're just in the background and they're not part of the story.
We will see. But before we get into the main content of this episode today, got to take this opportunity to shout out our sponsor, wizardtower.com. Check them out for all your Magic single needs. I should have done some prep before this. I don't actually know if they're running a sale right now. They were over the holidays. I don't know if they're doing anything for the new year, Boxing Day still.
Let me pull up their website, wizardtower.com.
I mean, we do prep for these episodes, but we don't prep for everything.
Yeah, some things are just unforeseeable. If we've learned anything this year.
Yeah. It's not like it's something we talk about on the literally every single episode and should be prepped for, but,
How could we have known?
Yeah, we do our best.
December sale. What are the details here?
December sale? Might be
ends December 31st. That's when we're recording.
Yeah. So disregard that. Still got a bunch of good stuff on there, though. So wizardtower.com.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we broke our 200 subscriber count on our YouTube channel. So
nice.
Big shout out to anyone who checked out those videos and been supporting us there. If you want to catch some cool new stuff, youtube.com/the Disorganized Wizards Club is the place to go. Like we've done for the past couple of years, the last episode of the year is our DWC year in review, where we discuss 10 of our favorite episodes that we've done from this past year. So if anyone who has, recently started listening to the show or has been listening for a long time and you're looking to, improve your game, these episodes we choose in particular are ones that go over a specific topic related to Magic, not talking about meta games, not talking about cards, but these episodes will have discussion on that sort of thing, but all of these have discussion based on a topic related to the game or gameplay that we think is worth revisiting. So
yeah, these topic episodes are some of our favorite to do. They're some of the most fun, and they're where we go over some generic, abstract aspect of the game that can be applied across formats and across decks to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Yeah, we try and pick the episodes that I guess are timeless. So regardless of how many years down the road you listen to it, of course there will be some discussion in there talking about the format at the current time. But all of these topic discussions are ones that you'll be able to draw from at whatever time it is in the future. So we've thrown together a list of 10 episodes. And for this first one, we're going to be heading all the way back to February 27th, episode 169, to Plan B or not to be. Almost didn't get that one out.
Great title. And this was one of our earlier episodes this year. And it was where we talked about how once you sort of have a deck that works and you're aware that it's viable in the meta, that you have a good plan, how to shore up your backup plans, how to make sure that you still have some game to play once other decks become capable of stopping your main game plan. This happens in all metas. If there's 2 or 3 best decks, they'll all figure out how to stop each other. And so then the next step is they all figure out what to do after they've been stopped by their opponent. This is usually sometimes called the nuclear arms race or the mid-range arms race. It appears in the forms of card advantage planeswalkers or creature lands sometimes fit into this category. But it's just, we went through a discussion of how to make sure that you aren't dead in the water if your primary plan gets stopped.
Exactly. And this episode actually goes hand in hand with another one that we did a little bit later in the year, Play to Your Plan, episode 208, where we talked about, the tension that arises between main and secondary game plans, which particularly relates to this other episode talking about Plan Bs, and how players can kind of trap themselves in towards playing towards the wrong plan. So these are pretty good episodes to listen to back to back because they tie in really well together.
Yeah, they're good tandem episodes. In the first one, we talk about making sure you have a backup plan. And at the end, we sort of hint that the best backup plan still isn't a substitute for what you built your deck to do. The primary plan is still going to be what decides most games. And in Play to Your Plan, the second episode, we sort of elaborate on that. We give some examples of what can go wrong if you pick the wrong goal and don't try and execute what your deck was built to do. So, good episodes to listen to in tandem to really get a feel for the balance of executing your game plan while making sure that you have some contingency plans.
Exactly. For episode number 2, we're heading all the way back to March 21st, which was a dark time. It was a...
Yeah, was this the first or one of the first episodes we recorded from a distance?
It was definitely within the first few, I would say. Because this was after the first isolational we ever did.
Okay. Yeah, so it was up there. But yeah, in March, we stopped recording in Stelly's studio, switched to recording online via Discord. We got some fancy microphone setups at our places. So,
yeah.
Crazy how, like, normal it feels now to just do the podcast from here.
Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting transition at the start, but now, I mean, you wouldn't even know with how everything's gotten together. But anyway, we were talking about this one, episode 172, Win Lane, Win Game. A very famous quote from co-host of the show, Adam.
So for anyone who's not familiar with MOBAs, games like League of Legends or Dota, the game starts with a laning phase where, I mean, the games are 5v5, but the laning phase is kind of 2v2 or 1v1, depending on which lane you're playing. And this kind of mantra / joke of win lane and then you'll win the game became kind of a catchphrase. And the idea is just, if you have a good early game, if you start a game off well, that advantage will carry through the rest of the game and it'll all be easy. So this episode focuses on early games, the importance of early games, how to maximize your early games, and gives an explanation of why having a solid start to a game carries through advantages into the rest. And I think we draw parallels to chess openings or StarCraft build orders or the laning phase in MOBAs, and how the same principles apply in Magic.
Yeah, and we bring up examples from not only constructed, but also limited, and really talk about how, especially with how cards have been designed over the past couple of years and how snowbally games can get, just really focused on that importance of that early game and basically how to go about it to give yourself the best shot. So definitely a good one to hop back on from earlier in the year. Moving right along. Episode number 3 from May 8th, episode 179, Paradigm Shifts.
Yeah, so this episode I think is good to keep in mind because the topic we explore in this episode is kind of challenging. Oftentimes there are play patterns that kind of just get ingrained in you as correct. Like you have enough experience, or you've seen streamers always do it this way, or it just seems like there's some way you should do something. And I think an example we draw from was when Hazoret was in Standard, there were very few removal spells that hit it, except for like Vraska's Contempt. So it just kind of became public knowledge that you saved Vraska's Contempts for Hazorets because it was one of the only answers. But we talked through how in a deck that we played, you didn't actually need to do that. And so we discuss how if you keep an open mind and sort of maybe make some exploratory plays and pay attention to the outcomes, it might be that you have some unjustified assumptions in the ways you need to be playing. And you could actually, we call it paradigm shifts because you can shift the way you think about how you have to play matchups. You can repurpose cards, you can reevaluate goals in certain parts of the game in certain matchups. And it really helps you navigate these in a new way that could be more successful. So really, it's just kind of an episode about how to challenge assumptions in gameplay.
Yeah, actually, interesting tidbit of info from this episode as well. It was the day after we premiered DWC Versus, which is our weekly Twitch show where 2 or 3 of us battle on Twitch on MTG Arena, twitch.tv/Disorganized Wizards Club every Wednesday night, except for the past 2 weeks because of the holidays, 9 p.m. Eastern. So we'll be starting that up again next week, most likely, so everybody can pop back in. We'll especially be going hard on it once the new sets goes out. Actually, I don't want to commit to next week. So
yeah, maybe we'll wait for Kaldheim. We'll see. But
it will be back at some point.
As soon as there's new formats, we'll be back with Brews battling.
Exactly. All right, what are we on? 4?
Yeah.
Episode number 4, July 5th, 187, Wraths on Wraths. This one we actually got a decent amount of feedback on. People really like this one.
Yeah. Every once in a while, we'll do a topic episode and some listener will message us being like, hey, thanks. Like, I listened to this and I made me change the way I played something. And like, I've been having a lot of success. And that always feels great. Just knowing that like, we're actually being successful. We're not just here blabbering about things that aren't relevant. And Rafts on Rafts was one of them. And this is where we had this idea in mind for a while because Adam sort of noticed it playing limited, and then I kind of noticed it independently, and so we came up with this topic. And it was that, I mean, this is actually kind of an example of a paradigm shift, one of the things we talked about in the previous recommended episode, that like the way people envisioned how Wrath of God types affect sweepers, you know, Wrath of God itself, Languish, Fumigate, etc. But the way people envisioned how these should be used might not actually be the optimal way to use them, especially in environments like limited. And so we just talked about how, like, you know, maybe not committing to the board, trying to get a bunch in a Wrath and like 4-for-1 your opponent isn't the best to play, and how instead you can use these as like a safety valve / backup plan. And sometimes that's more effective. And so it's just kind of it was a cool topic to discuss a possible shift in perspective on how sweepers should be used.
All right. Episode number 5, August 29th. Episode 195, Resource Trading.
This is one that I quite like. It might be my favorite episode on this list. Partially because it was an idea I had. But it's an idea I'm particularly fond of. And so this stemmed from a question that we got from a listener, just asking somewhat vaguely, how do I know what I should be prioritizing in a game of Magic? And on its surface level, that question is like equivalent to how do I play Magic better? Because that's kind of it. That's the whole game, is knowing what to focus on. But I thought about it some more, and I realized that, you know, there are a variety of different types of resources in the game. Things like life total, things like board presence, card advantage, tempo, however you define that, etc. And so for a new player, it can be a bit overwhelming. Like, which of these is important and when? How should I know which ones I should be caring about? And so in this episode, Resource Trading, we go through and explain to some extent which resources are worth more than others, in that you would be willing to trade resource A for resource B. And the argument I make is that there are certain cards that we have learned are good and that have been successful. And those cards have a resource trade as part of their function. And because that card is good, we therefore know that that trade is good. The example that I use, one of the examples I use is Thoughtseize. The fact that Thoughtseize is a good card teaches us that we should be willing to trade life total for virtual card advantage and information. And there are other examples. This card shows that you should trade this for that, etc. And I think I give sort of a summary hierarchy of which things matter when. Obviously, there are exceptions, like don't cast Thoughtseize if you have 2 life, then it's more valuable than the information. But it was a neat exploration of how the resources in the game stack up, kind of from like an evidence-based point of view, just like which cards are good.
Really good episode. Lots of good info there. Definitely check that one out if you are... I think this one was particularly good for players who are newer to the game and were, you know, approaching this kind of thought process for the first time. So definitely a really good one there. Moving right along to episode number 6, we have from August 14th, episode 193, Getting a Reaction.
So this episode, I think, came after a couple episodes we had done about how, like, putting reactive cards in your sideboard is not as good as putting proactive cards in your sideboard. And so we had kind of been thinking about proactive versus reactive gameplay patterns and decks and etc. for a bit around while we recorded this episode. And this one was maybe, well, this was part of that, but I think it was a particularly good one because we had discussed how playing proactive was better. So this episode became about how you can make your opponent play reactively, hence the title Getting a Reaction. And we discuss various play patterns and various ways you can navigate situations in the game that will sort of make your opponent blink first. so many interactions in the game of Magic favor the person who acts second. Pump spell versus removal spell. That's the first example that comes to mind, but there's a bunch. I don't know. Do you have any? That's like the classic one of damage-based removal spell and pump spell. Whoever casts the first one gets blown out by the second.
Yeah. I mean, if you're drawing examples to like control mirror matches, generally the first person to go for something big is the one who loses because they're down on mana.
That exactly.
Sort of
That's another good example. And so because of this, because of whoever acts first usually has a worse position or a worse outcome, we just discuss ways in which you can force your opponent to be the one that acts first so that you can take advantage of this.
Yeah, and we pulled some pretty good examples from constructed formats, from limited formats, and I think this was the episode where we dove a little bit into sideboarding as well, and how, to choose certain sideboard cards to get your opponent to play more reactively, and how you wanted to be more proactive with your sideboarding game plans. So definitely some good stuff here as well. 7 on the list. Episode 201 from October 9th, generic versus tuned sideboards. I always love the sideboarding episodes. I always feel like I gain the most from discussing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, the sideboarding episodes are good. I think that's an area where a lot of people feel a bit unguided or a bit like they're not quite sure what's going on. Like, it's kind of easy to understand why cards are in a main deck, but like sideboard guides are popular because it's not obvious why cards are in sideboards or how you should be sideboarding, etc. So sideboarding episodes are good. And in this one in particular, it was kind of a similar type of topic as the one about mana bases that we have on here later. But the idea is just, how do I even start building a sideboard? Where do you begin? How do I know what types of cards I need in them? And so we look at some examples of, I think, decks that were doing well in Standard at the time. And we kind of make summary observations that like each deck of this type has these types of cards in its sideboard. And in doing so, we sort of explain what does a typical sideboard for this archetype look like. And we explain how, through our years of playing Magic, we've kind of just internalized this. Like if I'm building a mid-range sideboard and I have no idea what the meta is, or I've just brewed some new mid-range deck and I don't know what it needs in its sideboard, I'm going to put in some extra threats for control, some hand disruption for control and the mirror, and like some extra small removal. And like that's usually a pretty good start. So we just discuss what do those generic sideboards look like for each archetype. And then we also talk a bit about, once you have a generic sideboard, what you should look for in the meta and how you can tune it from there.
Exactly.
But it's a good starting point for if you feel lost trying to come up with sideboards for your brews. This is a good episode to check out.
Closing in to the end of our list here, number 8, we have episode 203 from October 23rd, how to analyze a deck list. And I particularly remember this topic getting brought up because somewhere around this time, it might have been the month before or maybe a few weeks even, WotC started posting deck lists on magic.gg from Arena Ladder. And through every time we would pull up these lists or look at them, it just kind of, I guess, boggled our minds, you could say.
It's baffling. They tell us that these lists went 6-0 on ladder at some point, and I just don't believe them on some of those decks.
Yeah, and there was some very, very interesting deck lists in those deck dumps, and we kind of wanted to discuss just how to analyze a deck list and look at it and just be able to tell right away if there's something there or not, which is not the most obvious thing for newer players. So we really got into a discussion, and we actually rolled through one of the deck dumps to give our thoughts exactly with some concrete examples. It's a pretty fun and interesting episode for sure.
Yeah, that one was really fun to record. If you want to listen to us just being utterly confused by some deck lists that WotC said had somehow done well, you can check it out. But yeah, because this, I think it's a good topic, because every once in a while, especially as you mentioned from newer players, we'll see them post lists that they got from somewhere or that a friend's been playing, and they'll be like, this looks sweet, but like, how can I improve it? And you don't really want to be too harsh about it, but like, it doesn't actually look sweet.
Yeah,
and so
there's actually a lot of really good info here about how you can just not only looking at other people's deck lists, but just approaching your own deck lists and how you can look at them and kind of look for specific things that we look for. And it's really helpful for being able to tell right away if you're onto something or if you're kind of just all over the place.
Yeah, that too. How to take a step back and look at your brews or things you're working on and just ask, like, is this actually nonsense, or would someone else think this is like a reasonable idea? Mm-hmm. That was a fun one.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. All right, number 9, episode 204 from October 29th. How to approach competition from home. For this episode, we brought on a longtime friend, supporter, fellow Twitch streamer, podcaster, Michael Kritz, to the episode. If you guys want to check out stuff from him, he's at Michael Kritz on Twitter. And the title kind of tells it all. We talked about approaching competition from home with COVID, all the tournaments being online. We brought Michael on, and he really, we had a really good discussion about just how to just approach tournaments in this different kind of mindset, different atmosphere for competition, as opposed to what, me and you might be used to going to tournaments in person, that sort of thing. And it was a really good and interesting discussion.
Yeah, this episode idea actually came from Michael himself. He had suggested this to us or requested it. And so when we got a chance to get around to it, we asked him to be a guest to come talk about his experience, because he had kind of recently made this shift himself. He had found a way to approach competition differently, to get to the right mindset, even though he's playing from home. And he had hit Mythic a few times because of this. So he's on there discussing how he did it. We make parallels to for me personally, how I found a way to motivate myself to work from home when we all switched to doing that. So yeah, really good episode if you want to take Arena more seriously, or maybe like these SCG events that are online through the rest of the pandemic and even afterwards, if online events stick around. So yeah, if you're just looking to maybe make that push to Mythic, but you keep stalling out, or you just need some way to take Arena games a bit more seriously, there's some good pointers in here for how to get into that mindset, following a routine, changing the room you're in. Pretty good advice.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last episode of our list and our DWC year in review from December 11th, episode 210, Building a Better Mana Base. This episode, we did something different for our podcast. We did a case study that accompanied a YouTube video on our YouTube channel. And again, the title tells it all. We talked about how to build a mana base, what to be looking for when you have your core list put together, how to figure out what you're missing. And I think this is a really great episode for anyone who is starting to build their own decks, has really no idea what you're doing when you're building a mana base. And this one, I don't know if it's recency bias because we just did it, but this is probably one of my favorite episodes from the entire year.
Yeah, I like it a lot as well, just because it's so unique. It's, I think, the only episode we've done that had like a sort of a paint along for listeners, sort of they could build the mana base and then come back and see what we did. I think it's our only episode that was like accompanied by a YouTube video. Yeah, this episode was a bunch of fun. And yeah, what we did is we just had two sort of kind of goofy historic lists that we had built but didn't have a mana base. And so we show them, go through them, and then step by step discuss how we'd add a mana base to them, using information from the classic Frank Karsten article that details how many sources you need for certain percentages. And we built these mana bases, and we got some, just like the Rafts episode, we got some positive feedback on this one as well, that people liked this kind of play along type style. And then actually, I'm not sure if it's on our YouTube page, but the week later, for our Versus episode, we brought these decks with the mana bases and played them to see if they actually worked.
Yeah.
Mine did. Still, you got a bit unlucky.
Spoiler, mine didn't.
Well, I think your mana base was fine.
My mana was fine. Yeah. The mana was fine. The deck was bad.
Deck was bad, but like the mana was good. That's the point of this, is that you could cast things when you drew them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that wraps up our list, the DWC year in review. Thank you, everybody. All the new listeners, the old listeners, everyone who supported us over the year, whether it be on Twitch, YouTube, Patreon. We really appreciate your support. Big shout out, wizardtower.com, for another year of sponsoring the DWC podcast. Shout out to Card Hoarder for our new sponsorship we grabbed this year for MTGO. And really just, shout out to all of you for being here, listening to the DWC every week. We really appreciate all the kind words, all the support. And I don't know if Cam, you have anything else to add before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think you pretty much summarized it. But yeah, I mean, the podcast is super fun to do, and it just keeps becoming more and more fun. The Discord community is sweet. Running the tournaments is sweet. I'm looking forward to any tournaments we do in Kaldheim and throughout 2021.
For sure. The organizational will be returning when Kaldheim is released, so keep an ear out for that one. Don't forget, DWC.gg is the one place to be for all DWC content. One more time, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week in 2021.
See you next year. Well, actually, you're probably listening to this on the 1st, so see you this year.